just crawled out of the dumpster. I pulled my jacket back just enough so she could see the gun on my waist. She stared at it with that blank look of fear that always accompanies the sudden sight of a weapon by a civilian. "My daughter's the second on the right," I whispered. "Isn't she beautiful?" The woman smiled nervously and looked quickly away, not wanting to disagree with the mother packing heat. I glanced down at my pager, my partner's cell number. I'd left word with him that I wasn't to be disturbed unless there was a body, so evidently, somewhere in Pasadena, someone had died violently. I tried to focus on the stage, but my mind drifted to the distant crime scene. I imagined the position of the body and started to work backward. I could hear the dull sound of the victim hitting the ground, the crack of a gunshot, the sound of a scuffle, fabric tearing, individual voices raised in anger as events spun out of control. A flashbulb went off. "And the 2003 Rose Queen is—" "Come on, Lacey," I whispered. "You go, girl." A kid in his 20s with long dreadlocks, wearing a knee-length jacket, jumped out of his seat across the aisle from me and stumbled, falling to the carpet nearly at my feet. He looked up at me for a second in embarrassment, as if he knew me, then rushed up the aisle and disappeared. Behind me I heard the sound of movement. Out of the corner of my eye I saw one of the other parents stand up and point in horror toward the stage. As I turned back to the stage, I saw Lacey lifting up her dress and removing a dark plastic bottle that was secured to her thigh. "You're poisoning the planet for a fucking parade!" Lacey yelled as she began spraying the audience with herbicide. "Pesticides kill! Herbicides are poison! You're all killers!" People began diving under seats and shielding themselves with their programs as someone began screaming, "Poison! It's poison! She's got poison!" I jumped out of my seat and began pushing my way through the panicked audience, trying to flee up the aisle. On the other side of the auditorium, one of the SWAT officers was removing his weapon from under his suit jacket and rushing toward the stage, thinking my daughter had a weapon. I yelled no at him, but my voice was lost in the shouting and chaos erupting throughout the hall. I took out my badge and began yelling, "Police!" hoping it would help to clear people out of my way, but the only thing they were seeing were the exit signs. A woman in a pink dress with tears streaming down her face and hair sprinkled with herbicide ran into me and briefly looked me in the eye before pushing past with the rest of the crowd. Someone, seeing the other officer holding his gun, screamed, "No, no, no, he's got a gun!" I reached the stage as the SWAT officer took the steps on the other side, his weapon at his side. An usher tried to stop me, so I grabbed his hand and twisted it just enough to move him quickly out of my way. On stage, one of the contestants was crying and shaking her hands as if she had touched something hot. The SWAT officer was 20 feet from Lacey, his gun coming up from his side. "No!" I yelled, but he didn't hear me. Lacey saw the SWAT officer moving toward her and began to turn toward him and raise her spray bottle. "Lacey!" I screamed. The SWAT officer froze and raised his weapon to a firing position, just as two pageant officials grabbed her from behind. The spray bottle was knocked from her hand and seemed to hang suspended in mid-air for a beat, then fell to the floor with a dull thud. There wasn't a sound in the auditorium. All movement stopped. The officer stared at the bottle on the floor for a moment, then looked across the stage to me, took a breath, and quickly slipped his weapon back under his jacket. Someone said, "It's over, it's over," as the two officials quickly walked Lacey off stage. I took a breath, then another. The master of ceremonies, apparently confusing the pageant with the first space shuttle disaster, stepped up to the mic and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we've had a malfunction." Backstage, Lacey was seated on a folding chair, surrounded by a half-dozen gray-haired men in white suits who appeared on the verge of heart attacks. The man in charge was standing over Lacey, trembling with rage and repeating himself, "You're in big trouble, young lady, you're in big trouble." Lacey saw me approaching and straightened up in the chair, trying to give the impression that she was still in control. I walked up and made brief eye contact with her, then turned to the men in suits. "I'm her mother." The man standing over her turned to me, the veins in his neck pumping like fire hoses. He stared dumbfounded for a moment, then yelled, "She's disqualified!" "I think she knows that," I said. He shuddered like a tree about to topple. "In all my years?" "Yes." "I've never—" "I know." "Someone could have been hurt." "Only if they were beneficial insects," Lacey said. I looked at Lacey and started to shake my head. "That's enough out of you, young lady," the official said. He turned to me in a rage. "What kind of a mother are you?" The question caught me off guard. Who would really want to know the answer to something like that? I took out my badge and held it up in front of his flushed face. "I'm Lieutenant DeLillo, Pasadena Police." He stared at the badge as if confronted by a puzzle. "A policeman?" "Woman. Lieutenant. Mother." The white suits all glanced at one another, looking for some sort of direction. "I'll handle it from here," I said. "You damn well better," yelled the man in charge. I took Lacey lightly by the arm and led her toward the stage door. In case there had been any misunderstanding of his previous words, the man in charge yelled at us one more time. "She's disqualified." "Asshole!" Lacey yelled as I guided her out the door. Outside, a full moon lit up the parking lot with an almost unnatural blue light. As we walked silently to the car, I promised myself I wouldn't say any of the dozens of parental cliches that were fighting to come flying out of my mouth. I managed to stop the first outburst. "What?" Lacey said. I took a breath and tried to stuff the words back down my throat. "Nothing." "Right. Did you—" I bit down on my lip. "Go ahead, say it. I know you want to." It was frightening how well she knew me. "I hope you're proud of yourself." "Yes, I am," Lacey said, displaying none of the weakness of character I had just succumbed to. She turned to me, though I kept my eyes straight ahead. "I did something I believed in. That can't be wrong." To the east, the snow-covered San Gabriels loomed over us like a brightly painted backdrop on a sound stage. Jasmine was blooming somewhere, and the air held its sweet, delicious smell. Someone had covered the roof of their house with fake snow and strung a palm tree with Christmas lights. It was one of those perfect nights that sell the California dream without a word being spoken. But my mind couldn't hold on to it. Lacey had seen to that. It was fiction as surely as the notion of judging beauty. The truth, or the only truth I was willing to confront head-on, was the call I'd gotten on my pager. Somewhere below these mountains, on the alluvial fan that spread out below Pasadena, lay a body that had been ravaged by violence. We reached the car and got in. Lacey removed the rose-colored pump she was wearing and took a deep, relief-filled breath. There were a dozen things I wanted to say to her, a few that I should have. "You're really something. I don't agree with your methods, but I'm proud of you. I wish I believed in something as strongly as you do." I said none of them. "I have a call I have to take. I'll drop you at home." Lacey nodded, looking straight ahead. "Sure, Mom. Why should tonight be any different? Go take care of the dead." As we drove away, Lacey opened the window and casually dangled her pumps out under the moonlight. She spun them once on her finger. Then I heard them hit the pavement and skitter across the curb like rats racing for cover. I stole a glance at my daughter, who was staring straight ahead, the faintest hint of a smile showing at the corners of her lips. It was a perfect moment, her moment. I turned my attention